Hakadosh, Boker Tov. We're going to be continuing today to speak about Parashat Vayera. And when we're going to speak about the Parashat Vayera, we're going to try to focus on a person or a personality of Lot. Who exactly was Lot? We know in Parashat Lech Lecha, in last week's Parashat, it was brought down that there was a machloket between the shepherds of Lot and the shepherds of Avraham Avinu. And the Gemara in Nazir, Kav Gimel Amud Bet says, L'ta'ava yevakesh nifrad. Who is that? Lot. Lot, he desired after his ta'avot, he went after his desires. And therefore he separated from Avraham Avinu. And everything came from Avraham Avinu. Because there when it says, V'gam le'lot tolechet Avraham, it means that Avraham was the cause of everything that Lot had. The tzon, bakar, avadim, ushvachot, the cattle, the sheep, the maidservants, everything came because of Avraham Avinu. But still, Lot, he was money hungry. He was a person who loved money. As it says, the Lev Shalom Shudron explains in last week's parasha, he says over there, by Avraham Avinu, it's written, aholo, his tent. By Lot, it was written, right, in plural. Right? It didn't say, it said ohalim, right, in plural. Why did it say in plural? And the reason why is because at the end of the day, everything that he had, Lot was always looking for more. Everything was monetary, everything was money, and therefore it was a very big problem. So what happens is that you think about it even more. He was so money hungry, he wanted to inherit Avraham Avinu alive. When was the last time you saw an inheritance given over and during lifetime? Unless the person gives it, that's something else. But not that you could inherit during a person's lifetime. Here, he felt that he was an inheritor of Avraham Avinu. Do you know there was actually the machloket, between, later on, we just learned it in the Seder Adorot, there was actually the machloket between Eliezer and Yishmael, who was going to inherit Avraham Avinu. At the end it was Yitzchak, so it was neither or. However, though, here also, Lot wanted to inherit Avraham Avinu. Avraham Avinu had money, but he had no children. So Lot immediately says, I'm going to inherit my uncle. I'm the closest kin. Of course I should get it. And therefore, he wanted to inherit him. But you can't inherit from lifetime, during lifetime, because again, it says that he saw that everything was going. Now, what happens is that he became so blinded that he runs to Sodom. Sodom was a place of evil people. But what? Even though they were evil people, there was one thing. He saw the money. He saw everything there. So he comes and he tries to convince his son-in-laws. Now listen to this. He convinces his son-in-laws in order to come and to go with him. They don't listen. What happens? The Malachim says, out. So okay, fine. He can't wait anymore. So he leaves them behind. And now he has to take care of his two daughters and his wife. But do you realize when he comes back into his house, again, he's all calm. Yeah, he's very tranquil, peaceful. The fire of Gehinnom's right in front of him. The Malachim had to grab him and throw him out. And even with that, he still took time, right? What's going on here? Because you see that he was so money hungry, he said, what am I going to do with all my money? I came to Sodom because of money, and now I have to leave everything behind. He had to leave everything behind. Now you see that later on when he runs to Tzoar, he's afraid of being in Tzoar. Why? Maybe it's also going to be destroyed. So what does he do? He goes to the caves. But there it was very easy for him to leave. Why? There was no more money. Everything in Lot's life was all money. Money was everything that revolved around him. That was his being, his essence. Now, if we're going to come and we're going to say this, so we're going to understand what happened exactly with Lot. Why? Because there's a stira. The contradiction is that all of a sudden, Lot, if you're going to tell me that he was always money hungry, but there's a very famous concept that we know that Avraham Avinu, he did teach Lot something. Lot came and he was running in order to do the mitzvah of achnasat orchim. He didn't know there were angels at the beginning. He went running to them. And when he went running to them in order to come and to do the achnasat orchim, he realized that it was going to be a death sentence. he was doing a mission which was going to put his life in danger. His own daughter, Lotit, was killed, as is brought down in the Rashit Rabbah. And that's why they were actually decreed, because she went and she gave bread, right, to the poor people there in Sodom, and they killed her, a very cruel death. They put her in honey, and then they threw her into the bees. So imagine all the bees are coming, and they bite her to death. They kill her to death because she's got all the honey all around. They tied her up, and now that's it. They basically threw her to the bees. So imagine what type of a death it was, that they kept on stinging and stinging until finally she dies. Now, Sodom was killed because of that, was destroyed. But it says, Hakitza'akata. What is Hakitza'akata? The screamings of that girl, because she did chesed and she was killed, that destroyed Sodom. Now, Lot knows that. Lot saw what happened to his daughter, and he's still running. Now, look at the miracles that happens. They all come to the house, and they're going to take it down. And they were going to break the door until HaKadosh Baruch Hu made them blind. And if he wouldn't have made them blind, they would have taken down the door. So what do you see from here? You see from here something incredible. That you see that he was doing Mesirut Nefesh, like an incredible amount. The Pasuk actually says, Chanoch lanar al pi darko, kam ki yaskin lo yasin mimenu, that we always have to teach and educate our children when they're young. So therefore, even when they get older, they will not go away from it. What does that mean exactly? Lot, because he grew up in the house of Avraham Avinu, that's why he actually did the Mesirut Nefesh. He did his utmost and his maximum in order to do Achnasat Orchim. So now the question is, and this is the Saba Misabadka, he comes and he asks the question, and he says like this, explain to me then, if right now we know Avraham Avinu, his entire concept was chesed. Titen chesed Avraham, right? Titen Mel Yaakov chesed Avraham. What does that mean? Chesed is Avraham Avinu. If it's so, and anybody that's around him was influenced by chesed, and that's what you see from here, that again, according to the Zohar, right, everything that happened, right, because she was killed was because of chesed. Now it says over here that he comes and he tells them to come to his house. He comes and tells them, please, he pleaded with them. The Gaon Vilna says, whenever it says in the Torah, me'od, a lot, it means that we can't even understand how much he did it. That they went to the utmost and they were trying and trying. So the question is, one second, if that's the case, right? So why is it that when it's written, Vayiskor Elokim et Lot, Vayiskor Elokim et Avraham, Vayishalach et Lot mitoch Ephraim, that Hashem remembered Avraham, and then he took Lot out. What does Rashi there say? Rashi says, what was the merit? Right? HaKadosh Baruch Hu remembers Avraham Avinu, and that's why he saved Lot. What was the merit? The merit was not because of the chesed. Why was it?
Abraham.
But what was the merit?
Because of Abraham.
Which merit of Avraham? Because of the chesed?
No, because he prayed, he asked for his tefillah.
So says Rashi, when Avraham Avinu went, whether it was to Paro or to Avimelech, he kept quiet. Meaning Avraham Avinu comes and he says, she's my brother, or she's my sister. He kept quiet. Why? If he would have said, he's lying, it's the husband, they would have killed Avraham and they would have given all the presents to Lot. He kept quiet. Because of that merit, he was saved from Sodom. So ask the Slava Mitzvot, I don't understand what are you saying. How do you understand that? 2 minutes ago, you just told me he's doing Mesirut Nefesh for Chesed, he's doing everything for Chesed, and all of a sudden he doesn't even get rewarded for the Chesed. What's he rewarded for? That he's not one of the worst of the snitches in the world, that he's going to give over his uncle, his brother-in-law, because remember, Sarah is his sister, of Lot. So it's his uncle, the brother-in-law, and his rabbi. All three together. He's going to give him over to the government. He's going to give him over to get killed. What, do you really think that that's what's going on? That's why he gets such a big reward? And he doesn't get rewarded for any of the chesed that's going on? How could we understand that? How does that make sense even? So in order to understand this, we have to understand that sometimes when a person comes and they do things because they were educated in a certain way, that doesn't show their true level in Judaism. So what exactly does show it? When there's a fight. And now we're going to get into something which is very, very deep, but something very beautiful, which is called free will. We're going to explain exactly how does it work, and then we could actually understand what's going on with Lot. And the Chachamim come, this is based upon Rav Dessler, the Chelek Aleph, page 111, and the Siftei Chaim also, in the name of Yisrael Salanter, and they come and they say as follows. Lefum Tzara Agra is a very important concept in whether it's to do with free will and punishment and reward. Lefum Tzara Agra means according to how difficult it is the reward. So what does that mean? So basically what comes out is as follows. Sometimes you could have, and this is what Rav Yisrael Salanter comes and he explains as the Yesod of the Rambam, because the Rambam says, right, that how do we measure mitzvot and averot? It's not a numbers game. It's not in numbers. It's in value, right? It's not in quantity. It's in quality. What does that mean? You could have a mitzvah which is very easy for you to do, so therefore the reward is going to be normal. But you could have a mitzvah that's very difficult for you to do, so therefore the reward is tremendous. And the same thing with an averah. You could have an averah which is very, very easy for you to refrain from, and you could have an averah which is very difficult to refrain from. The one which is easy to refrain from, you're going to get punished more than the one which is difficult for you to refrain from. And Kal Chachamim, they say sometimes it's in the same mitzvah or the same averah. For example, Lashon Hara. If you right now come and you say Lashon Hara, you spoke evil of someone else, and you had no benefit whatsoever, there's going to be a big punishment. But if you had a benefit, that this person did something so wrong to you, and you come and you speak it, so this punishment will be less. And the reason why is because it was so difficult for you to overcome, so the punishment is less. Now, Kam Chachamim, and they say, there's always the nekudah of the bechira. What does that mean? Bechira, free will, is not in everything that we do. There are only certain parts that have free will. And we're going to explain it as follows. In the olden days, right, for example, right, I wasn't born then, so I wouldn't be able to tell you, but you learn it in history. Basically, it was something called World War I. Okay, World War I. So now World War I, how was the war fought? Completely different World War I to World War II. And World War III will be completely different to that one as well. Yeah? But what does that mean exactly? World War I was fought in trenches. How do you fight in trenches? What happened is that you had, let's say, Germany and France fighting. So on the border, right, of Germany, you have a trench. You have like a ditch. And they all go, they dig in. On the border of France, they also dig in. And then there's no man's land in the middle. How do you fight that war? The battle is not behind the front lines. Behind the front lines, there's no war, right? And even until then, there was hardly even planes. There were hardly all these things that they were able to go over, right? It wasn't the same thing like nowadays, right? And nowadays, even in 1940s, it had to be a plane taking a bomb. Now, why do you need a plane? You push a button, boom, a thing, 100,000 people, 500,000 people, 1 million people could die in seconds. Once upon a time, you come, you have to go, send out a plane. He's going to bomb something. How many people are already going to die? You understand? So what happens though? What happens is, where's the battle? The battle is only in the battlefield, in no man's land, right? Anything which is on the opposite sides, there's no war. There's nothing there. So therefore, Kam Chachamim, and they say, the exact same happens with the bechira by the human being. For example, Baruch Hashem, here we're all Shomer Shabbat. Is there a battle inside of ourselves to be Shomer Shabbat? Did Yetzer Hara ever come to you and say, you know what? You don't have to be Shomer Shabbat. It doesn't even start because that's not even a battle. Does the Yetzer Hara come and even tell you, right, that you're not allowed to come and you're not allowed to kill? It doesn't speak to you. There's no war. There's no internal type of a fight or a struggle, and then you're going to overcome yourself. However, though, the exact same is the other way around. When was the last time that there was an internal, fight or whatever, to come tell you, don't speak Lashon Hara, right? Or you're going to have to learn for 5 hours straight. Probably never happened, because it depends where the level is. And therefore, where is the fight? Only in a certain area. All the other areas, whether it is above or below, depends on the level of a human being. It's not a fight at all. There's nothing really there. So now, according to this, right, what happens is that we have, right, the entire concept of going up and down in the same level, which means everything in the trenches, how did it work, right? We would be fighting, but we're always fighting in between that level. If I wanted to advance, what do I have to do? We have to come running out of our trench. Let's say we're from France. We have to come running out, charge to the other trench, and basically we have to take it over. When we take it over, they're going to retreat and they're going to dig in again. And that's how we advanced. And that's how we continue going. And sometimes it could go the other way around as well. So therefore, right, how do we have to actually change the battlefield. How do you change the battlefield? I gave this in the past, right? That we said, for example, you have people that they don't pray in a minyan. They never pray in a minyan. They don't pray in the tzibur. They pray at home or whatever, right? And I'm not talking because of the virus, just in general. They always prayed at home, right? Let's say they would go to shul, synagogue only on Shabbat or Yom Tov, things like that. So what happens? So all of a sudden their bechira is do they pray or not pray? Why? Because once they're at home, do they actually pray? Not pray? Maybe they'll pray later on. They don't have time today. They woke up late. This, that. Do they even pray? Okay, that's going to be their fight. Imagine right now, right? They come and they pick up their game. They always come and they're mitpalel. Yeah, and when he's going to be mitpalel, so now you have a question. Does he actually go to a tefillah b'tzibur or not? Because now it's not a fight anymore. He always prays. Now the only question is, where does he pray? Let's say he picks up the game again. Again, he advances in the trenches. And he's always coming to synagogue. Now the question is, does he come on time or not on time? Right? After even that, does he pay attention or not pay attention? Does he concentrate? And you continue going. Meaning that once a person's already at the question of whether he's concentrating or not, there's no question anymore whether he's going to pray or not. The praying or not was at the beginning, or by a person that sometimes he prays, sometimes he doesn't pray. So for him, the battlefield is, does he pray or not? But for a person that prays every single day, that's not a question. He's for sure going to pray. The question is when. For a person that always prays and he prays with a tefillah b'tzibur, there's no question about when he's going to pray. He's going to pray in a minyan. The question is, does he come on time or does he come late? If he always comes on time and he always prays and he always comes to tefillah b'tzibur, that's not a question anymore. So what's the question? Does he concentrate in the tefillah? And that's how we're supposed to be advancing in everything that they do. So he says, what happens is, now according to this, we understand another Gemara. The Gemara says that when a person comes and they do an Avraham, and they do it a second time around, it becomes permitted for them. The Gemara says, do you really think it becomes permitted? It's not permitted to do an Avraham. It says, no, it becomes like it's permitted for them. Why? Because in essence, what's happening is we're taking this battlefield and we're bringing it downwards. Beforehand, there was a battlefield, right? Should I do this Avirah or not do this Avirah? Once you start doing it frequently, now there's no battlefield there anymore. Automatically it becomes that you do the Avirah. And now the battlefield becomes at a lower level. Because we are the ones that within a certain scope, we're picking up and down the battlefield. That's what we're doing. And other than that, all the rest, there's no real fights. Right? You don't have an internal struggle whether to eat or not to eat. The question is, what are you going to eat? When are you going to eat? How are you going to eat? Once a person comes and he says, you know what, I want to eat healthy. So now to eat garbage is not a question anymore. So now what's it going to be? What time? What type of healthy? What's healthy? You continue going. And that's the same thing with everything in life. Because it all depends on where is the battle. But nobody's going to start battling whether you're going to actually do that or not. So now comes and says Rav Dessler in the name of Rav Yerucham, the purpose of the bechira, tachlita bechira, the purpose, the end result of the bechira, of having free will, is to annul the free will. Which means that Kadosh Baruch Hu comes and he gave us free will. Our mission in life is to give him that free will. To come and to give it to him and say, Kadosh Baruch Hu, everything that we had a choice, we're giving it to you. We don't have that. Now we will still get the reward like the beginning. What does that mean, like the beginning? Basically, we would ask ourselves, 1 second, so why would I ever get rewarded? So the answer is no, but you do. Why? Every single time that you continue because of what you did at the beginning, you get rewarded for that. So for example, explains of Yisrael Salanter with this, the Gemara in Masechet Sukkah, Nun Bet. There was written that in the future, HaKadosh Baruch Hu will take the Yetzer Hara and he's going to do Shechita. And when he does Shechita to the Yetzer Hara, for the Tzadikim, it's going to look like a huge mountain and they're going to be crying. For the Reshaim, it's going to look like a small little tiny hair and they're going to be crying. So everyone's crying. Tzadikim are crying and the Reshaim are crying. Everyone's crying. The question is why? So explains Rav Dessler, that's what happened. The Tzadikim, they look and they had a huge mountain at the beginning, but they conquered it. Even though that mountain, they conquered it, they get the reward like it was a mountain for the rest of their lives. Even though afterwards there was no fight anymore. They were already tzaddikim, learning the entire time, watching their mouths, doing chesed, doing this. But it doesn't matter. At the beginning, it was a big mountain. The Reshaim, at the beginning, it was nothing. It was a little tiny hair. But they didn't conquer it. So what happens? They fell. Once they fell, once, twice, 3 times, it's still like a little tiny hair. So they get the punishment of what? You couldn't conquer a piece of hair? You couldn't conquer what you did? Now what happened? They were the ones that brought themselves down. They were the ones that brought down this entire concept of what we mentioned of that now they have this quarrel, this fight in between them, this internal struggle. But now that's why they're crying. So what happens is the lefum tzara, you're only going to get it on the mitzvot, right, that you are going to fight for, which means like this. Lefum tzara agra means according to how difficult it is, you're going to get the reward. Let's say you're born with something. Let's say right now you're born Shomer Shabbat, meaning you were born to a family, they're all Shomer Shabbat. Are you going to tell me now that you should get a big reward or you should get a big pat on the back that you're Shomer Shabbat? Saying, Ribono Shel Olam, obviously you're Shomer Shabbat. You were born in such a family. They always were like that. So what do you want them from them? What, you want a medal? A medal for what? You were born that way. So now where exactly are you going to get the reward? So therefore says Rav Dessler, the majority of the people, they do mitzvat anashim melumada. What does that mean? They were born into it. So for them, HaKadosh Baruch Hu just gives them the reward just for the action, but not on anything on the effort, because there was no effort involved. However, though, if a person works on it, so then he also gets on the effort. So explains Rav Dessler, that's why we say, why? Because he wanted to give us a bigger battlefield. HaKadosh Baruch Hu gave us more mitzvot in order that we have a much bigger battlefield, and we could actually fight more, and we could actually come, and we could get more mitzvot. Because if not, then we would actually have a big problem. So now when we're going to come back to Lot, now it comes out, and we answer up as follows. It's something incredible. Lot was brought up with chesed. What does that mean he was brought up with chesed? He was brought up in the house of Avraham Avinu. He lived with Avraham Avinu. So therefore what happened is that since he lived with Avraham Avinu, what happens is that he starts growing up in a sense that chesed is life. Chesed is everything. So for him, he comes, and no matter what, no matter if he sees his own daughter dying because of chesed, he's going to run to do the chesed. And he's going to do his utmost to do the chesed. He's doing everything chesed. So for what happens? He's not going to be rewarded in the chesed. He'll get the mitzvah, but you're going to tell me it's a huge reward? It's not a huge reward. You were brought up that way. You were educated that way. What type of reward are you going to get for that? However, though, right, there was one thing that he always had an internal struggle. There was one thing that for him, it was always the fight of his life. The most important theme of his life. And this he didn't get from Avraham Avinu. Because remember, as we mentioned last week, Avraham Avinu at the beginning was poor. Only later did he become rich. On the way down to Mitzrayim, he didn't even have money to pay for the hotels. It was only on the way back that he started paying everybody off. Because he didn't have any money. He was poor. So therefore, what happened? All of a sudden, Lot, he has this internal struggle about money. And the money is everything in his world. What's the proof? He separated from Avraham Avinu just for money. He ran to Sodom just because of money. Everything. He was staying there. He was almost going to be swallowed up there also as well, right? Because of money. Everything was money. So therefore, for him, the fact that he kept quiet and he didn't say anything to Paro, even though he could have made millions, he could have gotten all that money. That's where his reward comes in. That's where HaKadosh Baruch Hu is going to come and say, pat him on the back and say, Kol HaKavod. Because in the fact of doing chesed, you get a mitzvah. But that's it. You did a huge chesed. You were born with that. That's what you were brought up. So there's nothing there. So therefore, Kam Chachamim, and they say, right, but there's one more step to this. And the step to this is as follows. Let's say you have a person that, let's say he was brought up to be Shomer Shabbat. Or he was brought up to pray. But now you came and you took it to a different level. Before you were Shomer Shabbat, just because your parents were Shomer Shabbat. But you actually went and you learned the halachot of Shabbat. You learned what's permitted, what's prohibited, how to properly understand what is Shabbat, to benefit from Shabbat, to be mechabed the Shabbat, to honor and respect the Shabbat. Now you do get the reward. Because you took that and you took it to a higher level. And therefore, it wasn't the same that you were accustomed to at the beginning. Now it's a completely different level. So now with this, we understand another concept. In Parashat Toledot, we know that there was two people. They were both barren, Yitzchak and Rivka. And all of a sudden, HaKadosh Baruch Hu listens to the prayer of Yitzchak more than the prayer of Rivka. And everyone asks, why? They're both praying, right? So why? Says Rashi, right? Because you cannot compare the tefillah of a tzaddik, of ben tzaddik, to a tzaddik ben Rasha. You cannot compare tzaddik ben tzaddik and a tzaddik ben Rasha. Now, if I'm going to explain this, let's just think for a moment. Tzaddik ben tzaddik means you have a tzaddik, the son of another tzaddik, a Yitzchak, the son of Avraham Avinu. Tzaddik ben Rasha is Rivka, the daughter of Betuel. Who in your eyes would be more important? Who in your eyes you should listen to more? If you're Hashem, what would you tell me? Where are you going to listen to more?
Tzadik ben Tzadik.
Tzadik ben Tzadik. Why?
Well, in theory, it should be Tzadik ben Tzadik, but you do Tzadik ben Rasha because it's more difficult for them to, because of the environment where they grew up.
Very good. So you would say Tzadik ben Rasha. Why? Since it was much more difficult for them, for sure you should listen to them. Correct? Now come Chachamim and they say, but it's not true. That's what Rashi just told you. So the question is, why not? And the answer to that is that being a Tzadik ben Tzadik is more difficult than being a Tzadik ben Rasha.
Because you start in a higher level, so you need to even overcome that. You have to keep going.
Because for you to be Tzadik ben Tzadik, that you're just on the same level as your father, you're not a Tzadik. You were born like that. That's not a Tzadik. To be a Tzadik ben Tzadik means you made it on yourself. You came and you worked on yourself to be a Tzadik. That's even more difficult. But to be a Tzadik ben Rasha is easy. You have a Rasha, a wicked person. The child comes. He doesn't want to be the same thing. So what does he do? He starts learning. He starts becoming a Tzadik. Chazaku Baruch. Tzadik ben Tzadik means that I took what my father had and I had to add on to it. And that's actually Rav Chaim Falache that he says, why is it that we say Elokei Avraham, Elokei Yitzchak, Elokei Yaakov? Why don't we just say Elokei Avraham, Yitzchak, Yaakov? So he says, you know why? Because every single one of the forefathers made the Kadosh Baruch Hu their God in their own unique way. They didn't just take whatever their father gave them and that's it. Yitzchak could have just said, you know what am I going to start working on? Gvura, Pachad Yitzchak, strength, justice. But Chesed Abraham, my father's Chesed, I'm going to be a Muda Chesed, and that's it. Yaakov Avinu could have come and said the same thing. Each one worked on themselves in their own unique, specific way. And because of that, they reached a higher level. So really, being a tzaddik ben a tzaddik is even more difficult than being a tzaddik ben a tzaddik.
Rabbi, it makes a lot of sense what you're saying, but also we learned that where the Baal Teshuvah stands, a tzaddik cannot stand there. It says that the growth of a Baal Teshuvah, because of the challenges that they have, since a tzaddik, doesn't live in the environment of a Rasha, so we always have the expression where the Baal Teshuvah stands, a tzaddik doesn't stand, meaning that the Baal Teshuvah has like higher reward.
So that's what we think. We have to actually remember like this. First of all, that Gemara is actually a machloket there in the Gemara, right? What's the explanation there? Meaning that some people argue on that. And even according to that explanation, where the Gemara says that where a Baal Teshuvah stands, a Tzadik Gemur cannot stand, this Tzadik is also considered a Baal Teshuvah. We think that a Baal Teshuvah means that you were doing Averot and you did Teshuvah. Here, you are coming, and you're not just a Tzadik that you never sinned, because you're right, a person that never sinned and a person that sins and does Teshuvah, the Rambam says the one that sinned and does Teshuvah is greater. 100%, that's that Gemara. The concept though is that we're also Baal Teshuvah. If I was born Shomer Shabbat, but I didn't really keep Shabbat Be'emet because I never learned Shabbat. And I just, I respect Shabbat and I keep Shabbat. But Chazak U'Baruch, but that's not really keeping Shabbat. Now I come and I take the Shabbat and I respect it. And I come and I actually take it to the next level. Now I'm keeping Shabbat. So I am actually becoming a Baal Teshuvah. That's called a Baal Teshuvah. I came and I did Teshuvah, and now I came and I perfected myself in Shabbat. I now feel what is the Shabbat. So therefore, this is what we're trying to say here. So according to this, now the parasha makes 100% sense. Lot took in from Avraham Avinu, when he was younger, the concept of chesed. So he comes and everything is chesed. He will not get rewarded for the chesed the same way that somebody else will get rewarded for chesed. It was instilled in him. It was ingrained in him. This is inside of his blood. He's not going to get a reward for that. That's obvious.
And you cannot argue that the environment of Sodom and Gomorrah might change, although he grew up with Hesed, because over there he was in that environment. It's like here nowadays, nowadays, it's a struggle, everything that we do, because of the environment that we live. We don't live in Modim Elite or in something that is all religious people. So for us, it's more of a struggle to keep what we're doing. Can you not argue that also with Lot, that although he was he had it within his DNA, let's put it that way, the Chesed, once he gets into an environment which is completely the opposite, that's not a struggle for him?
So the answer was what we said at the beginning. Chanoch lanar al pi darko gam ki yaskinu esur mimenu means is that if you educate a child properly at the beginning, even when he gets older, he will not abandon it. Because when you come and you take a child and you train them in a certain way, they will automatically do it. And even if once in a while they are in a case of force majeure or in a case where they cannot do it for whatever reason, if you take that away from them for 1 second, they will be the first to do it. Because that's their nature. It becomes a nature to them. And that nature is what we're talking about here. So that's why Avraham Avinu, his nature rubbed off so much. Think about it. Avraham Avinu's nature rubbed off so much that even his nieces, the daughters of Lot, everything was chesed. She gave up her life for chesed. She was killed for chesed. Meaning it wasn't just stam, it was an ideology. The entire life was based on that. So therefore, obviously, Lot is going to be the same way. But to do with money, it wasn't like that. Because he was money hungry from the beginning. So that's why that was the difference between them. And now with this, with the Nekudat HaBechira, now we actually understand everything that goes on. So therefore, we have to actually challenge ourselves and ask ourselves, where is our point of Bechira? Where's our free will? Why? Because many times, remember, the free will is over here in the middle. Everything which is above, there's no free will there. And there's no free will in the bottom. The reason why there's no free will is why? Is because there's nothing there, there's no fight. Now, according to this, we actually understand a Gemara. Do you know there's a Gemara, Mesechet Brachot, Avchet, there was a machloke between Rabbi Meir Balanes and his wife Bruria. Bruria comes and she hears her husband that he's praying that certain bandits in his community should die. They were troublemakers. So he was praying that they should die. She tells him, why are you praying they should die? It's Pasuk and Tilim. Right? Rosh Chodesh, Shitamu Chatayim Minaretz, Ushaim Odenam. Right? Barachina Shiet Hashem. Get rid of the... She comes and she says, 1 second, you want to get rid of the Chatayim? It's not written Itamu Achotim, the sinners. Itamu Achataim, the sins should be abolished. Not the sinners. The sinners, you just have to pray that they should do teshuvah. He agreed to his wife. Yeah? He agreed to his wife. It does happen once in a while, by the way. Right? Also in last week's parasha, no? He was told, you have to listen to your wife. Right? Remember, but if it wasn't written in the Torah that this is the only time, right? But when God tells you have to listen to your wife, you have to listen. Other than that, that's something else. Okay, so yeah. So what happens is that all of a sudden, by the way, this is going to be the exact antithesis of what I'm going to speak about in the next part of the shiur, but don't worry about it. Yeah. So what happens? All of a sudden, what happens is that right? Rabbi Meir comes and he starts praying that they do teshuvah. Yeah, he starts praying. They should do teshuvah. The Marsha there comes and he asks a very simple question. How does it help to pray for someone else to do teshuvah? Imagine right now I'm going to pray for you to do teshuvah. If I pray for you to do teshuvah, I just took away your free will. But how does it work? I'm praying that you do teshuvah. And now what? And then now you're going to do teshuvah? That means I just took away their free will. You don't have free will because I just prayed for you. Listen to the answer of the Marsha. The answer of the Marsha is, you know what it is really? What happens is that when I pray that somebody should do teshuvah, HaKadosh Baruch Hu will come and give them the opportunity to do the teshuvah. They will still have the free will, but he gives them the opportunity. What's the opportunity exactly? He says, you know what it is? All of a sudden, they will see that there are going to be Rishaim around them that will be punished. And then they think to themselves, wow, I have to get my act together. I don't want to be the same way. And then I do teshuvah. Which means that HaKadosh Baruch Hu comes and he purposely will put that a Rasha will be punished and he'll see it. He'll be able to recognize it. And therefore, what my tefillah does, my tefillah does not change his right of will, his free will. He still has free will. What my tefillah does is that it makes it all of a sudden that he will be able to get a message right in front of his face. And that message will say, oh, 1 second, maybe I should do teshuvah. And when he does teshuvah, then it's from his own free will. And actually now it comes out beautiful because now this is something completely different. It's not the same that we mentioned before that we think about, right? The entire concept of how it is. Now everything changes because now a person actually does have free will in everything that they're doing. Okay? So this is the first part of the shiur that we just mentioned.